Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another episode of the strategy series. This time we are going to go over 74 tips for new players here in the Dragon Ball Super card game. That sounds like a lot, it might be a little overwhelming. I'm actually really excited for this video because I posted a community project that you guys can see right here on the screen. That I posted this community video project question: if you can give one piece of advice to a new player, what would it be? Telling everyone I was going to do a video about it. I haven't read any of these comments yet. This has been up for a few days now and I haven't read any single comment yet, so hopefully there's nothing like too outrageous there, but I'm going to go through it and kind of explain everything, take the points, see what they mean to me, see how that I can apply them to you. This is just a community project from everyone in the Dragon Ball Super community, an amazing group of people, and we are all going to give you guys 74 tips for new players. But right before that, guys, if you're new to the channel, definitely hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that notification bell so you stay up to date with all the awesome Dragon Ball Super content I post here. If you're looking for a Dragon Ball Super community to get personally in touch with, check out our Discord server in the description below. Excellent group of people, get advice in your decks, talk about the game, things like that. And finally, guys, if you really like the channel or you want to get up on some competitive content, some competitive articles, things like that, check out my Patreon in the description below. Just $1 a month gets you access to all the articles I post there. I've got several Patreon shoutouts. Thank you guys so much. Sandro, Sal, DeJollner, James, Victoria, and Jacob. Thank you guys so much for deciding to support this channel. Really means the world to me. All right, so we'll get into this. We got 74 different tips to go over with you guys. So first off, Pat O'Neill, my teammate and friend. Just because you see it online or in a deck list doesn't mean it's always true. Experiment, find out what works for you. This is really important with playtesting. Just making sure that certain tech cards, like for example, I'm not a big fan of at all cost Vegeta in mono blue decks as a finisher. For other people, it works better. They kind of can see the play lines where, okay, my opponent tapped out, I can punish them for it. I don't like it if I don't have a battering laser to back it up. That's like a weird example, but it is kind of a thing. Experiment is a key thing. Playtest a deck. If you have a concept for a deck, don't just like talk about it. Test it. You got to see if it works. You guys see me do that on stream pretty frequently. I have some crazy deck ideas and a lot of times they don't work, but then you find the one that works pretty well and then you can go from there. Next one, Keaton. Play the Dragon Ball Super card app. This is the best way to start the game. I agree. It's a great tutorial. That's how I learned how to play the game when I first started about 2 years ago. So yeah, pretty good advice. Anthony Barrett, he does have a channel, Universe 13. Go check him out. Importance of thinking about your whole turn and being able to adapt to your opponent's reaction to your play line. Adapting leads to W's. Adapting leads to wins, yeah, through some matchups, though some matchups are just not winnable. I do agree with that. There are some very, very tough matchups, and I've had experience with that at events. I've talked about it. But importance of thinking through your whole turn, yeah, it's important to think a couple steps ahead, and it's really important to think about what your opponent might have in response. Like when your opponent might have the time magic to stop your dual attacker, your opponent might have the Mafuba to stop your deadly defender. There's a lot of things you got to think about, and these come with experience playing card games and honestly reading up on competitive content. So things like that. Caleb, my teammate, again, take some time to read all the cards and see what might be overlooked. Yes, this is a piece of advice that before I started this game, before I started playing the Dragon Ball Super card game, I went on Eddie St. Hilaire's channel. He, actually, I think it was on PPG at the time. He put out a video and made a statement saying, read every single card in the card pool. It's small enough and it just helps. You don't ever get caught off guard by anything and you know what everything does. You can be the person that finds something that creates a format, so that'd be really cool. Troy Keane, know your matchups. 100% this game is completely very, very much matchup dependent, and knowing how to play like against Zeno, against Cell Chain, against Gogeta 7, it's all very important. Brian, one of my patrons, play with what you're comfortable with. Misplays are your biggest enemy. Don't put yourself in a position where you are facing yourself when you should only be facing your opponent. Yes, do not beat yourself. Do not misplay. Misplaying is how you hand your opponent a free win. Dylan responds, it's similar to main character classes in video games. You're better off learning every in and out of a single thing and how to play every matchup and then trying to pick the flavor of the week every time. Once you master one, the rest will come easier. I do agree with that. Those loyalists to those rogue decks, or even those loyalists to those meta decks, are very, very well off. Scott, as there is many decisions to make in this game, be decisive and learn to make decisions in a timely manner if looking to play any kind of competitive level. Yes, you don't want to be called a slow player. You don't want to get stuck in time. Danny Wynn, my great friend, but man, you play so slow. Like Danny Wynn, I saw him go 4-0-4, 4 wins, 0 losses, 4 draws at the last Atlantic City event. You don't want to be that player that gets stuck in time all the time because it will hurt your record. Even though a draw is technically better than a loss in points, it's going to lead you down a bad bracket. You don't want to get caught in ties all the time. Daniel says, honestly, read over cards, try to memorize them, helps on offense and defense. Saw too many people sharked because they don't know skills of opponents' cards. Yes, you again, important, know card effects. Very, very important. Take your time. Chris says, take your time to learn what the cards do and the interactions that work with them. Too many times, including on my own, I've seen people think a card works one way, but it works another. It's one of those important things and sometimes goes unnoticed. CJ says, or sorry for the meme, get good and draw the Mufuba. There's another reply here. Yeah, so yeah, learn what cards do. Very, very important key point that we're pushing here. Cam says, meet people in the community. Building a network is a great way to find access to help and new ideas. 100%. Like, this is the greatest community I've ever been a part of. I was a part of the competitive Yu-Gi-Oh community for 5 years, and I never really met anyone outside of my local testing group, and it was kind of unfortunate. Maybe I didn't put myself out there as much as I do now, but again, it's like this community is an amazing group of people, so definitely take Cam's advice. Brian says, this is very often overlooked, especially when it comes to newer players being afraid to ask questions to veterans or even nationally known players. They're just normal people. Most of them are down to earth and more than happy to help. This absolutely wouldn't be half a decent player as I am if I didn't get my feet held by players like Ozzy Prez and Corey Porter, Lucas says. Next piece of advice, Victoria says, if you have any questions on what an opponent is doing on triggers or autos, ask. This is how I learn how other people's decks function. Another advice I don't do enough is you can play other people's decks. Do it so you know what you're up against in the future. This is a great piece of advice, actually, because playing the other decks in the format, playing the other decks you expect to face, gives you a new perspective on how those decks function and can sometimes give you an idea on how to beat them. So, like, how to interrupt their play, how to, knowing what attacks to combo out of, things like that. Very, very helpful advice from Victoria. Mike says, take time to read everything. Just don't take your opponent's word for it, of course. Nick Morris, the One Piece, I said one piece of advice. He gives a One Piece gif. I like it. He comments below saying, always have a good time. Every game can be an adventure. If you make it one, you can aim to be king, but enjoy the way. Yeah, Nick is actually one of my local players, and he does do that a lot. He tries to do the anime voice and all that kind of fun stuff. Just keep it fun. Keep everyone away from the salt. Josh says, play what you like. Seriously, if you like a character, you'll have more fun playing that character and making the deck. That's definitely true to an extent. I mean, if you're trying to play, I can't even think of like a bad example because so many rogue decks just did well recently with like Chilled and Maidens and things like that. But I do believe in this game that if you have a solid understanding of deck building and matchup knowledge, you can do well even with rogues. So, I talk about that on my Patreon a lot, so definitely check that out. Bradley says, don't get stuck in what you think a deck should do. Don't play for one specific wing condition. Play the cards you're dealt, not what you hope to draw. Yes, that is 100% true. You have to, sometimes your wing condition just doesn't want to come to your hand, and you need to find an alternate way to win. That's why a lot of like the Broly height victory strike decks, if they don't see height for whatever reason, they have mirror double strike in the deck just to help win. So you need to play out of any situation as best you can. Sometimes it is unplayable, but in this game that doesn't happen too much. Sandy says, know your deck list down to a T. Yes, this is very important. Make sure you know what cards you're actually playing, especially at an event where you can't really go back and look at your deck list. Oh, how many peel off did I tech? 2 or 3? What are my odds of drawing this card back? You need to know that. Also very important when you're side decking. I don't know if this is going to come up later, but when you're side decking, know what you took out of your deck, because if you end up like, oh crap, I'm looking for this negate, my 4th negate, oh, I sided it out. That could be a real issue. So make sure you remember that. Shane says, being able to be honest with yourself about your strengths and weaknesses, setting your ego aside, and proper learning from games. Yes, sometimes you need to play to learn, not play to win. That's very, very important. Ask questions mid-game. Take that person at your locals that wins all the time and ask them questions. Play with them, get advice, things like that. Very important. Gavin says, my advice is everyone has their own opinion, so be aware of that. Interesting. I think he's talking about like the ban list stuff that kind of goes on in this forum here, but not quite the advice I was looking for. But thanks, Gavin. Ethan says, don't try to buy everything. Read ahead and pick 1 or 2 decks that you want to play, and don't worry about promos and exclusive cards unless you're traveling to play in tournaments. Everything is playable. We've put time into learning to play it competitively. I do agree with that to an extent because, of course, like I said, I am a big fan of playing Rogue. I'm a big fan of knowing your stuff playing Rogue and being successful, so I do agree with that. Antonio, one of my local friends, says, get good. Yes, definitely get good. Parrish says, learn the art of making your combo power worth it. 100% yes. We have a video on the channel talking about how to combo correctly. I also talk about that on my Patreon ad nauseum. Definitely check that out if you need some advice on that. Sam says, play against friends on Octagon and try decks that you normally don't play. If you know how other decks generally work and the tools that they have, you'll have a better time when you face them. 100%. Talked about that already. Isaiah said, scooped Isaiah Herring, blah, 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 blah. But on a serious note, okay, stay calm in all stressful situations. If your opponent has it out, then it wasn't meant to be. That is so true. I've learned to think about that, and it really makes me a lot less salty when I lose, because sometimes you don't draw the card you need to win. Sometimes your opponent draws the perfect card. There is a luck factor to card games. There is a chance factor, and I personally am a person that believes in fate. I believe that if I ever win an event, it'll be something that was meant to happen. And sometimes you just don't draw the right cards. In order to win an event, it has to also be your day. It has to also be your day. It's not gonna. Everything has to perfectly align essentially for you to win an event. Luck has to go your way. So Shane says again, being able to see what you've lost before it happens, identifying your out and going for it. Yeah, identify your outs for sure. Know what you need to beat your opponent. Jesus says, just play the tutorial app over and over again. That is definitely good if you're learning the game at first. And then Brian says, understanding the card economy. How much should I be willing to spend to protect this battle card? Which should I combo, and when should I hold back? If I don't kill with this EX Evolve that eats my hand, how dead am I? Yeah, so again, the importance of kind of just comboing correctly and knowing when to go in, when to hold back. Eric Goodwin says, just because it worked for someone else doesn't mean it'll work for you. 110%. We definitely see a lot of that with net decking, and I'm definitely not saying that net decking is an issue. Like, that's how a lot of people play the game. Not everyone's a great deck builder, but like we talked about before with tech cards, not every tech card is going to work great for you. Steven Spanos drops his famous line, get good and draw them a Fuba. Yes. Josh says, play the percentage game. Play to your outs and gauge the percentage of going for game or holding back a turn and killing battle cards instead. Manage your resources correctly at a high percentage to be able to win. Yes, 100%. Again, like if you're gonna get Gogeta 7'd, I have 3 Pilafs in the deck. My odds of drawing back into it are decent because my deck is getting low. Things like that. My opponent dropped a barrier guy. My odds of drawing into my Striving Vegeta or Planet Vegeta to search into that Striving Vegeta is somewhat decent. So yeah, definitely keep the percentages in mind, what you might draw, what you need to draw. Bob says, knowing when to press the attack and when to keep cards ready to defend. 100% yes. Look at your opponent's drop area. Have they been through negates? Have they been through a lot of super combos? Have they been through their unbreakables? Things like that. Travi, we're going to ignore that one. James says, assuming the player is really new, probably take the damage until 4. A lot of new players try to avoid taking damage without considering how the smaller hand size will put pressure on every other facet of the game. 100% yes. In most matchups, you take the first 4 shots to the face no matter what. The only ones you want to really kind of not do that against used to be Cell Chain, but we haven't really seen Cell Chain be very relevant right now. And this is actually very relevant against Chain Zeno, so definitely take advantage of that. The rest of the matchups, you do kind of want to get to 4 life, take those shots to the face, especially if they're not crits. Curtis says, just how to improvise new decks and how to tune existing decks to combat the meta. Absolutely. Brandon, learn how to combo good. Again, got a video for that on the channel. Robert says, knowing when to just have fun and stop worrying about the W or the loss. Daniel responds, I actually enjoyed a game in Atlanta, even though you wrecked me. Yeah, so they're having a little personal conversation. But yes, absolutely. Definitely know, when to have fun, especially at a local event. Like, don't get salty at locals. No one likes a salty guy at locals. He's really, really annoying. So definitely just take it in spade, take it in stride. You'll be all right. Andrew says, hey, I like it. Out of ideas, so make the community make your newest Patreon vid. Yeah, hashtag free content. Robert says, knowing when to have fun. Is that repeating again? Brian Brown, Android in the chat, on the stream here, says, be competitive but have fun doing it. Absolutely. The funnest part of going to these events are seeing my friends, seeing new places around the country. That's what I really enjoy about the events, and meeting you guys for sure. The tournament is definitely important, but if I lose, at least I have things to fall back on that will still make for a fun weekend. Ben says, test with and against the meta deck so you know how they work and how to play against it. Yes, very important. Victor, to actually read the rules, knowing how the game works can help when people try and pull a fast one. Yes, this game, more than some other games, has some pretty weird kind of rulings, and it's pretty important to know how those work, especially like Cold Bloodlust and the counter timing windows. Those are very important things to know. Jeremy says, to not be afraid to ask questions on cards and rulings, even if people in here can be a-holes about it. Yes, definitely ask those questions that you have if you're brand new to the game. You might get some people that say read the card, or some people that kind of are a little bit insensitive to the fact that you're a new player. People in this community will respond to you with the correct answer, so definitely do that. Eric says, never tap all your energy. Yeah, it depends on the situation, especially if you need to be defensive, especially if your opponent's going to, bring the heat the next turn. That's good advice. Josh says, always read the whole effect of a card, both yours and your opponent's, definitely. Hayden says, subscribe to Eggman, but seriously, learn when you should and shouldn't take life. Yes, definitely. Again, we talk about the Chain Zeno matchup, very important knowledge there. Leon says, sometimes you just shouldn't attack your opponent. If they're at 5 life and you don't get a card or hand advantage or whatever from swinging, you're probably just doing them a favor. Now they don't need to do the effort of awakening themselves. This example obviously assumes they're not running a Shenron leader. Yes, that is pretty important. Stalling your opponent used to be more viable in like set 2 and kind of the beginning of set 3, but as time goes on, there's a lot of self-awakening cards in the game, but he does still have a point where if you leave someone at 5 life, they need to use energy to awaken themselves most of the time. So that's very important. That can kind of take down the tempo of your opponent's follow-up turn if they can't just awaken freely. Ryan says, if you have friends who play, ask them for suggestions on where to start rather than building the current top deck. They should know what deck you might enjoy playing. Good advice. Diego says, knowledge is so important. Knowing what your opponent wants to do helps so much. Yes, definitely. Erica says, watch people play. Go to a local store. Watch and ask questions. Helps to have a SO or friend who plays too. Definitely. Steve says, read the entire rulebook and the FAQs. It will make reading the cards significantly easier and understanding the answers to questions too. Yeah, the rulebook and the FAQs definitely help you understand kind of how Bandai has decided to formulate their sentences. They do have a translation team, so they're not, one-to-one translations, and sometimes they're a little wonky. Definitely keep that in mind. Edwin says, focus on the basics first before worrying on results. Like, it's always nice to get wins when you can, but learning what your deck can do and how to win with your deck goes a long way. Definitely, you need to learn how to play the game. You need to learn the mechanics before you can expect to start winning a lot. Steven says, I would tell new players not to combo on their attacks on leader unless it's a crit attack or the final attack. Too often I see players early game go heavy for double strike when I'm at 6 or 7 life. Yeah, definitely. I talk about this specifically in the how to combo video here on the channel and a lot in the Patreon as well. You definitely need to know when it's the correct time to push damage, and oftentimes if you're double striking your opponent at 7 life, they're just going to take it. There's no reason for them to combo out of it because it's 2 free cards. Chris says, don't wear your emotions on your sleeve. Stop talking so much. Silence is golden, especially in card games. Even the slightest tell could be the difference between your opponent going all in on you and taking game, or playing it safe and passing turn. Definitely, if you're in a bad situation and you draw a card and it's not the card you needed, and you have that sourpuss on your face, you pout, your opponent knows you drew crap. You can sometimes use that to throw your opponent off. However, like, that's really hard to master and really hard to, you have to be like an actor for that. So again, yeah, silence is key. Don't give too many tells. Todd says, learn and grow with a loss. Why did you lose and what could you change? Absolutely. Most of the time when people lose, there is something they could have done differently to change the outcome of that. Sometimes there is just the unfortunate luck of the draw, but a lot of times there was something you could have done better to probably win that game. When I go back and narrate my own gameplay, I see that all the time. It happens all the time. Cody Hoskins says, don't be afraid to build decks outside the meta. Be the person who finds the next meta deck. Yes, innovation is really, really cool. Giovanni says, my biggest advice for a beginner or newbie is to understand the elements of play that influence their game, hand economy, board state, etc. Assuming that they understand the basic levels of gameplay. The biggest thing I see with beginners in card games is them either mismanaging their resources, tapping on energy, using up all the cards in their hand, etc., or failing to identify or value all of the elements of play that influence their game properly. Understanding the elements of play will help all card players improve their skills in TCG. Couldn't have said it better myself. Zane says, don't buy packs, buy singles, and just because a card isn't worth much doesn't mean it won't be in a few months. Yeah, once you are in the card game pool for a while, you can learn to kind of like read the market, see what cards are going to be powerful, and those cards might shoot up in price. Lucas says, taking life is more or less the same as drawing a card. Don't treat effects to do that as some sort of negative. I pretty much agree with this. There's some instances where that's kind of weird logic, but I do pretty much agree with that. Like a lot of times I'll say like Sankava, yeah, you attack with it draws a card, where my friends or things like that might say it's not drawing a card, it's taking a life, you're hurting yourself. Yeah, but you want to hurt yourself for the first 4 damage of the game most likely, and even if it's late game, if I'm attacking my opponent at 2 life per game and I attack with Kaba, I want to take that extra card to see for more combo power, so it's definitely pretty equivalent to drawing a card. Richard Zapp says, winning isn't a reasonable, obtainable goal. You can't fully control if you win or not. Winning is something that sometimes is a consequence of playing well. Set goals you can fully control or your better development. I think this is a very interesting concept. I don't completely 100% agree with it. But I will say that you want to play as tightly as possible. You want to misplay as minimally as possible. And even if you play a perfect game, your opponent might still beat you if it's a bad matchup or if they draw the perfect card. So I do kind of understand what you're trying to say. Set goals that you can fully control, like, not misplaying or, getting better at deck building, things like that. Those are things you can control. Shane responds, probably the best advice I've ever gotten, and it's helped me tremendously. Remco says, knowing your own deck and know what your opponent can do with his. Absolutely, that comes with matchup knowledge, knowing what your opponent can do with their available energy. Mark says, play as much as possible and skills will come over time. Never happens overnight. Absolutely. I think that's a good comment to end on. Play it as much as you possibly can, and the skills will come with time. Yes, definitely. In TCGs, you'll understand resources, you understand, efficient plays, trades, and, when to combo, things like that with more experience. But luckily, you guys have this channel to get more tips and advice on that type of stuff. So I hope if you're a new player, I hope you found this helpful. This comment is on Facebook, on the Facebook group. If you want to ever go back and read over it, just go in the search bar and type in community video project. Should come up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Joey. This is Crossroad TCG, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Hey guys, now that you made it this far, listen good, listen close. In this pile of bulk behind me, I've got a victory strike just sitting there, unsleeved. Just minding its own business, just wants to be played, just wants to be used, just wants to, cheese people out of wins. And I swear, if you don't hit the subscribe button or check out some of our other videos right now before clicking off this video, I'm gonna rip it to shreds. I'm gonna tear it up. I'm gonna waste $500 if you guys don't hit the subscribe button or check out some of our other videos. I swear, I'll do it. I really will.